So Buddha decided to switch from the god side to humanity. This led to the gods having to replace him, thus bringing in Hades, the god of the underworld. But that was not all that needs to be done to truly even the odds. You see, Buddha joining humanity means that there's 14 fighters on the roster for humanity and only 13 fighters on the roster for the gods, even with the inclusion of Hades. That means that if this is to go the full duration, as most people expect, another god would have to be added to the fray. Now, of course, Ragnarok doesn't have to go the full rounds, but I think most of us expect that to happen, and I think that most of us expect every human that was on the roster to get their fair shot to have a round of Ragnarok. That's what we all want to see. It was kind of what was advertised, so I think it would kind of look weird if they didn't fight, but you never know. But in this video, we're going to assume that they are going to go the full duration, and we are going to see another god added to the mix. Now, who could that god be? Well, one very strong possibility, especially if you guys have watched my Evil Odin theory and the video I just dropped a couple days ago talking about the Norse takeover, would be that there would be another Norse god added to the mix. Why do I think that? Well, I believe that Odin is trying to usurp Zeus for full control of the god realm. I think he wants to be in Zeus's position as kind of the overseer of all the gods. And I think that to strengthen that claim, as the Greeks keep losing in Ragnarok, as they keep getting wiped out, as their fighting force keeps getting diminished, the Norse would keep winning rounds. They win Ragnarok for the gods and would keep being bolstered up, and their strength is still at its full capacity. I think that that would fit in line with the narrative of the story. And so far, we've only seen Thor fight, but we know we have Loki and Odin already on the roster, ready to go for later. I expect Loki for sure to win his fight. And depending on a couple different things, I think Odin could definitely win his fight as well. But if another god is to be added and is a Norse god, who could it be? Well, one candidate comes to mind, that being Hel. We have not seen her yet, but she is the goddess of the underworld in Norse mythology, the goddess, the ruler of Helheim. Now we know that the underworld in Record of Ragnarok is called Helheim. We also know that before Hades, there was at least two rulers, one of which being Satan, the other one is unknown. I've come out with a theory talking about how I believe that could have been Osiris, because we have the Egyptian pantheon still to come later, as Anubis is scheduled to fight. But it's possible that that second ruler was actually Hel herself, or that Hel could actually emerge as the new ruler of Helheim following the death of Hades. We have not seen her yet. I think that that is for a reason, but also she would be the first female fighter in Ragnarok. I don't know if the author wants to do that because he had Aphrodite on the roster in the original drafts before revisions. So for some reason he decided to take Aphrodite out, although Aphrodite really never seemed like a fighter anyway. So it really didn't make sense for her to be fighting regardless. But he doesn't have any females on the roster so far, so I don't know if you'd want to add one later. But I think Hel would be a good option if he is to add another Norse god, because we actually saw Tyr in Thor's backstory, and he did not look impressive at all. He looked like he was weak as hell. We saw Thor solo all the Jotunars, and Tyr was getting bodied. So one option that a lot of people have brought up in terms of a Norse fighter being added is Tyr. I don't see that working out because he looked weak as shit in the backstory. Now, another option could be one of the legendary Jotunars. Fenrir, Jormungandr could be cool, but they'd have to take on kind of a humanoid form. So that's what kind of leads me to believe that the best option would be Hel. Now, there is also Vidar, the god of might, and one of the lesser known sons of Odin, but he is very, very strong. He's usually stated to be like the second strongest son of Odin after Thor, and he's actually the one that defeated Fenrir in Norse mythology. So Vidar is also somebody I could see. I would really like it because Vidar doesn't get shine in anything. To see him in Ragnarok and to get a triumphant victory, I think it'd be very, very cool. I also forgot one. So Balder, he's actually probably the most prominent one. I forgot completely about him. If you guys are familiar with God of War, he was the villain of the first Norse mythology God of War game, 2018. He would be pretty cool. The only thing is, like, he's the god of light. We kind of seen that whole dynamic with Tesla. They calling him the child of light, but a god of light would be different. And his light is more supernatural, as Tesla's is more scientific and electricity based and all that type of shit. So Balder could also be really cool. He's also like the favorite son of Odin. So maybe like, hey, Odin would put out his favorite son. The only thing there is that I don't know if he'd want to sacrifice his favorite son. That's the only thing. So that could also be a storyline. Like Odin would really be on the edge of his seat when Balder's fighting, because that's his favorite son. I think that'd be cool. I'd still have Balder win, but seeing Odin react to that fight would be really cool. Especially if it was a scenario where they were looking for a 14th god and then Balder just walked in and was like, hey, I'll fight. And Odin's like, oh, hold up. Like, I don't want you to fight, really. And then he ends up fighting. So that's the Norse route that we could take. But of course, this 14th fighter doesn't have to be Norse. So who else could it possibly be? Well, my favorite choice out of all these is the sun god Ra, the leader and chief god of the pantheon of the Egyptians. I would love to see Ra added to Ragnarok. I mean, it only makes sense. Anubis is fighting, and he's not the chief or really anything of importance in the Egyptian pantheon. Like, yes, he is a god of the dead, but he's not even the preeminent god of the dead. I mentioned this in my Osiris theory. Osiris is the one that rules the underworld. He's the father of Anubis. So Anubis should actually be pretty far down the pecking order in terms of Egyptian gods, which means there should be ones that are stronger. Why not have them fight? Who knows? Maybe they got wiped out. Maybe there's a whole big backstory talking about the Egyptian gods that we have yet to see. But I would love to see at least Ra, since there is a slot available, bring him in as the chief of the pantheon. We saw Shiva be the chief of the Hindu gods. We saw Odin as the chief of the Norse. Zeus as the chief of the Greeks. We need to see the chief of the Egyptians stand tall. So I'd like to see the sun god Ra. Like I said, there should be a plethora of Egyptian gods stronger than Anubis, so really any of them would fit. Osiris would be cool if he's still alive. Set would be really cool because he's kind of like the god of chaos over there. There's a lot of them. So I'd love to see another Egyptian god added. I don't see them adding another Hindu god. Now, they could also go completely outside the box and add a completely separate pantheon of gods to just further the lore even more. And if they were going to do that, I'd like to see something like the Aztec gods. I think that'd be really cool. There's some big time gods in that pantheon, which I would love to see. I don't really know how to pronounce their names. If you guys search it up and look into that pantheon, I'm sure you guys will see there's a lot of interesting options there. And if they were to add another pantheon of gods, I think the Aztecs would be probably the most well-known. So they would definitely probably be my favorite. If they were to add another pantheon, I could see that happening, especially if they just want to throw their chief in there. I think it'd be really cool. He'd probably fight with a totally different fighting style than anybody we've seen before. I think that'd be a really cool option. Another thing would be, obviously, there's a possibility they could add yet another Greek god, which I think would be overkill, but it's possible. And if they were to do that, I think it would be Hermes, because he's kind of been set up. He's obviously extremely fast. I touched on this in my other video. He's the god of speed. Think he'd be really cool and strong. Also, we saw a tease that Zeus might hop back in for another round. Yeah, I mean, he was going to step to Buddha. Maybe he steps in again later on to just be that alpha dog to upstage Odin when it all really matters. But who do you guys want to see as the 14th god of Ragnarok? Do you think that we are going to get to the full 14 rounds? And if there are 14 rounds, that means we must have a draw, because it won't be 7-7 because it's the first to 7. That's what a lot of people also forget. It's the first to 7 wins, which means it has to be 6, 6, and 1. There has to be a draw. So it's looking like that draw could be happening this round potentially with the Beelzebub Tesla fight, although you guys probably have heard my thoughts on that. So yeah, drop all that in the comments below. Let me know. Also, if you guys have any questions that you want me to cover on this channel, drop them in the comments. If I like the topic, I'll cover it here. I just did one of those in my most recent video posted before this, and you can go check that out. That video will be linked in the description, as well as my Evil Odin theory and the most recent chapter review for chapter 75, Tesla Beelzebub. That fight's heating up, so go check that out. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, drop a like, turn on that notification bell, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.
She don't do it with no hands, she a master. If they question how I get it, I got answers. Like, well, she got me tripping like